We will go ahead and there we go. We'll get started. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I am very excited to have so many of you being a part of this today. I think we had almost 700 people RSVP through LinkedIn, and so many of you others that have come in through all sorts of different ways to talk today about tough conversations. And this is certainly something that we deal with every day, but it feels more like with everything going on in the world right now with COVID, pandemic, stay at home, that we are having to have sort of different conversations that we're not used to, and maybe difficult conversations in new contexts, in new mediums, in new ways. And so it's my hope today that I can provide to you some of the best strategies that I use, the best strategies that I've learned, and those that I have been able to sort of take from other experts, and really put it here for you today in a short and sweet way. Now, we will certainly send out a copy of this. We will post this video later on, probably next week. But if any of you would like a copy of the deck, I'm more than happy to do that for you. You can email me there, find my website there. You can follow me on Twitter or social, wherever you need to do that. And you can even text me. That's my number if you'd like to know more. So we'll go ahead and get started here today. There is a Q&A area inside of this WebEx presentation. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it. Based on where we are, I may stop and answer the question if it's a good time. And if not, I may just wait until a more appropriate time or towards the end, of course, to do that. And we'll stick around to answer any questions anyone has at that point. So let's go ahead and get started. In case you don't know who I am or you have not been on any of my webinars previously or seen me speak in keynotes around the country, around the world, my name is Chris Dyer. I'm a company culture expert. I am a serial entrepreneur, and I'm also the CEO of People G2, which is the sponsor and host today of this webinar. And I've been really fortunate to speak on all different sort of platforms, on TV, as I said, in keynotes, and I've written a book called The Power of Company Culture. Now, as I said, my day job, though, is being the CEO of People G2, where we do background checks and drug testing and help out companies, especially right now, those companies looking to bring people back or really help and deal with how do they hire, how do they screen people when maybe they're at home and they can't physically be with them. Good news is we have tools that can help you with that. So if you'd like to learn more, let me know. But People G2, it really started its story, and we began as a remote company, began as a traditional company, became a remote company back in 2009, and we've really been studying culture, thinking about how to have better conversations and to work with our teams. And ever since doing that, we have become a best place to work many, many times in many different ways. We've been an Inc. 5000's fastest growing company 4 different times, and you've probably seen us all over the web. And in fact, yesterday, we were super excited that staff writer over at Inc. did a huge feature on us, Sophie Downs did, on how we meet. We've done over 100,000 virtual meetings as a company since 2009, and so you can find that story on the Inc. website. We were super excited yesterday and telling all of our friends and posting it all over the place. But that's some of the members of my team there, and we really enjoy the way we operate, the way we work, the way we meet. And sometimes when we meet, it's not always fun. It's not always pleasant. It's not always something easy to talk about. And that's what we're going to get into today, is some of those strategies. And so I hope this can be helpful for all of you. Okay, so as I mentioned, I wrote a book, Power of Company Culture. You can find it wherever you buy books, online. But we really focus in on these 7 pillars. And I think that companies have to have these 7 pillars, have to be doing these things really, really well in order to be a great culture and a great company. There's lots of evidence for this. But inside of that, the subtext of that is you have to know how to talk to people and have conversations and really work through these types of things. I mean, how do you be transparent? How do you be positive? How do you assign measurement to things and focus on what's unique and provide the recognition at the right time and make sure that we're a good listener? And I've done recently a webinar on that. You can always find that on the website if you'd like. And how do we deal with people who make mistakes? So these are all certainly important parts, and I think what we're going to talk about today is in support of that. Now, I always start most of my webinars with Daniel Pink's work, Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose. I love his stuff, and I really think that it's super important that we remember that we need to give people autonomy to do their jobs. We have to be helping them find ways to get better and to learn new things. And we have to make sure that they're aligned, they understand what our purpose is as a company, and that they're aligned with it. If you don't have these three things, this is usually the source of all of your problems, right? You can't get better, and you can't have better conversations, and you can't have a better culture if this isn't, as a foundation, something that your company is doing well. All right, so let's talk about these tough conversations at work that we're having. And of course, this extends to tough conversations with spouses and kids and in-laws and parents and anyone else that you might be suddenly dealing with in a new way now that most of us are stuck at home and dealing with this COVID pandemic. But there are some key personalities and some key people that we want to think about and identify. People like the bully, the narcissist, the manipulator, the slacker, the blamer, the control freak, the victim, the passive-aggressive one, that's my least favorite, the psychopath, the baby, the know-it-all, and the overbearing. Now, the reason I put out some of these titles is that you may instantly identify with one of these, that this is the person who you've been struggling with. They are the fill in the blank. First thing I would do is try to identify which one you think they are and go Google it. There's like a million fantastic strategies. If you know kind of what that person is, who they are, they're the slacker, they're the bully, there's some fantastic stuff on the net. Just some really simple, things to try, some great books. I really, really suggest that you kind of go out and do a little bit of research, because going into it sort of unprepared and alone, you kind of end up going back to your default kind of mode, and that often isn't going to help you get where you need to be. So kind of knowing who you're dealing with is a really big deal. And then you can begin to apply some of these strategies that I have that we're going to talk through here today. Now, before we talk about the other people, and before we talk about these strategies, I do want to remind you that it starts with you. And it really starts with the story that you're telling yourself. Make sure that the story you're telling yourself about that other person, or about all difficult people, isn't somehow some filter about you. And we need to take, representation of our stuff, of the things that we struggle with, of the stresses and the complexities that we're dealing with, and that we're not somehow just pushing that off onto somebody else and then calling them difficult. We have to really make sure that we think through that. So ask yourself, what is the story that I'm telling myself about this person? And really think through it. Make sure that it's accurate. Make sure that maybe you're off. Maybe you're not exactly right about this, and maybe you need to think about it more. You do research, have more conversations, get other people's thoughts about how they're seeing somebody else, to make sure that your own sort of stuff isn't being put on there unfairly. Now, if it is them, right, and they really are difficult, and you really do need to worry and think about them, here's what you need to do. Here's sort of the process that you need to go through before we get to some of the strategies. Now, first one is identify that type, as I mentioned before. Make sure you know, are they the bully? Are they the baby? Are they the slacker? What is it? How could you sort of qualify them into a particular person, a particular type, so you can think about what the strategy might be. And go back, do some research, confirm with peers, experts, whatever it may be. Make sure you are correct about that they are sort of fitting that type, and that you have some strategies. This may be tough. Can you see the world through their lens first? Why are they acting this way? Why are they thinking this way? Why do they react the way that they do? Why are they treating you the way they're treating you? Now, it may not be for any good reason, but at least give yourself that opportunity, that moment, to try to see the world through their eyes, to figure out if there's any way for you to empathize with them, sympathize with them, any way to maybe reach them in a better manner by trying to see the world through their eyes. And I often find that this is one of the most important things we do, is just to stop and turn off our brains and all the stuff going on and to try to see it through their world. We often find some really, really interesting perspectives and maybe a better way to proceed. So, and then to think about, what is it they want? I've had difficult bosses, I've had difficult people. And when you really think about what is it they want, they often want results. Maybe they want their boss to stop yelling at them. Maybe they want to lower their stress levels. Maybe they don't, you can kind of come up with a lot of different things. And if you can figure out what they want, you can sometimes help them find better ways to deal with how they're reacting, and to maybe be more effective. Try to simplify everything. So if you're going to have an interaction with them, can you simplify what the issues are? Can you simplify where you're going to meet with them, how you're going to meet with them? If you're going to have a tough conversation with someone, you don't go do it in a busy cafe, lots of noise and distractions and things. So however you can simplify the conversation in as many ways as possible will make you far more effective. Make sure you have an agenda. If you're going to talk to someone about things, maybe it's just about regular things and they're a difficult person. Make sure you have those agenda items figured out in advance. If they call a meeting with you, you better ask for an agenda. You need to know what they want to talk about in advance so you can be prepared, you can have what you needed ready, and so you can avoid that unnecessary conflict. If you want to talk with them, make sure you provide that information so that they can bring down their stress levels and anxiety and not show up with a bunch of other stuff you weren't ready to talk about. Taking great notes is really, really a strategy that can help you make sure that you're not misreading things. If you go back and read your notes, you can often kind of see maybe a pattern in what they're talking about, what they're bringing up, what they're seeing, how they're interacting with you that might help you with future meetings. Make sure you negotiate what happens next. Often with difficult people, we just want to get out of the room, we just want to end the conversation, we just want to be done, and neither party knows what's supposed to happen next, and so you're both pissed off the next time you come together. So make sure you think about that and negotiate that with them. And then right now, during this time, video is a must. Eliminate the phone call. Right? Eliminate the simple mobile phone call or whatever you're doing. Try to get on video with them so you can see them, they can see you, and you can have a much better interaction, or at least you can understand that person and the body language and what's going on like you would if you were able to meet them, face to face. Okay, so let's get into the strategies here. Don't forget, if you have a question, throw it into the Q&A. I'm happy to try to address it. But I'm going to go through, I think I've got 11 strategies here for you today to try to help you deal with people that maybe you're struggling with. The first one is, and I find this to be terribly effective, is before you get into anything difficult, before you start, getting anyone's upset or we're talking about what you want to deal with, is to ask the question, what is working? What's good? Right? So maybe you have an employee that's, kind of really being a bully with a particular group or really being a difficult person. Before you start talking about all the things that are a problem or all that, ask what's working. What do they like about their job? What do they like what's going on? Maybe you can talk about what you do like that they're doing, where they are being successful, and then get into the things that you need to talk about. When we identify what's working, we can often level set for that person, hey, 90% of what's going on here we're happy with. You're doing a great job. We're good. It's this 10% we need to work on, which is a different message than, hey, you're terrible, I don't like you, you need to fix everything about what you're doing. So we really need to get them to think about that and for you to think about what's working. So we can remember that part, put that over in that compartment, and then focus in on where we can improve, which is a better way of phrasing it than what the problem is, right? So where can we get better? Where can we improve? How can we make this relationship better? How can we make your interactions with your team better? How can we make your interactions with clients better? Whatever that may be. Strategy 2. Now I find this is a great strategy for the bullies, the babies, the passive aggressives. Often they just want to be heard. And a lot of their energy is just about them wanting to get it out. They've turned you into their therapist. And they just want to get it all out. And there's nothing you can do to circumvent that. So if that's the kind of person, if they're agitated and they're talking, and no matter what you're saying, they keep going back to these same things, sit, take good notes, let them get it all out. If they got to just talk until they're blue in the face, let them. As they're going through that, as they're talking, and you're not interrupting, you may ask clarifying questions, you may nod or say and give them the idea that you're hearing them, but let them tell you all the things they want to tell you, even if it's nonsense, even if it doesn't make any sense. Then, when they're done, ask them, is that everything? Have you been able to share everything you wanted to tell me? When they say yes, then say, great, I'd like to go back and kind of walk through some of this and share with you what I'm thinking. And make sure they don't interrupt you. Make sure that they don't start up again, because when they do, and they will try, say, excuse me, I listened to you, let you say everything you wanted to say. Would you mind if I was able to do that without being interrupted as well? It's a really, really good way to sort of get them to calm down, eliminate the back and forth, eliminate that conflict, and get them to just let them, it's their turn to listen. You listened for however long, now you get them to listen. If they won't listen and they continue to interrupt you, you end the meeting, you end the interaction, and you come back later when they are willing to listen and calm down. That's the only way to sometimes deal with someone who's so emotional and so upset that they are talking and talking and talking. Number 3, if they can't calm down, if they can't cool off, if they're being insulting, if they're being irrational and they're just attacking, then you say we need to reschedule and we can have a better conversation. This sometimes is a power play on your part that you're not going to listen to them if they're not going to behave. But more importantly, it is a, hey, if you're not ready to have a better conversation, let's come back later. You are helping them cool off. You can cool off if you're upset and come back, because then they'll have time to have thought about it. They'll have had time to talk to a friend or a spouse or someone, and they'll have their thoughts better kind of aligned, and they might still be emotional and upset, but at least you'll have taken it down at least 1 or 2 notches. If they come back and they're still not where you need them to be, again, it's okay to reschedule. And it's okay to show them sympathy and empathy and to say, I understand how upset you are. We really need to be able to talk through this in a way that isn't insulting or to where you're crying or that you're yelling or whatever this may be. We need to continue to bring down this level so we can have a better conversation. It's okay to keep rescheduling. I've had to do that with people that were really upset 5 or 6 times. We start the conversation, we get going. I might get more information, and then they might get really upset, and I would say, well, let's stop for now. It seems like we're having a kind of getting into a bad spot. We'll come back tomorrow and pick this up. It's hard to do because we don't like the thought of having to come back and do this again and keep talking to this person again who's driving us crazy. But ultimately, you get a much better reaction. And if this is someone that's an employee or a vendor or someone, you're sort of training them slightly in the way that, hey, we're only going to have a conversation if we can be at this level set, if we can be in a safe place, in a safer environment to have a good conversation. Okay, so the next one is get help, right? If you feel like you're struggling with this person, that you're not being successful, bring in another manager, bring in your manager, bring in a coach or somebody, maybe a person they trust, right? Sometimes you may just need a witness. Sometimes people just act better and they don't have as many bad behaviors if there's more people in the room, right? There's more people in the meeting. If it's just one-on-one, it's your word against theirs, they kind of can act a little more aggressive. So sometimes you just need to have another team member, another manager, somebody there that can help you see things, help you implement the strategy. Of course, this works great with an upset client, upset vendor, but again, sometimes it's just even that witness thing or that, go back with that person and say, no, this is what I was hearing in that meeting, and this is where I was upset. And they might have a different perspective, and maybe you're the one being overly sensitive in a particular area, and they're not seeing it the way you are. So it can really help to kind of get help here when you're dealing with someone who is upset and is one of these maybe more difficult personalities. Next strategy is to be proactive. And I've begun to kind of mention this a couple times, but when we avoid and we try not to interact with that person as much as possible, we usually end up having a much bigger and more uncomfortable conversation with them later on. So if we can be proactive, sometimes, I've had like, let's just say an unhappy client that it seemed like you just couldn't please them no matter what you did. And often our reaction was to try to get them happy and then just disappear. Don't, try not to interact with them. Hopefully they don't get mad again. We found them to be irrational. And I've taken the opposite approach of saying, I want to have a call with you every week for the next month and to make sure that you're okay, to make sure that you're on track and that's where you want to be. Even though I don't really want to do that and it's uncomfortable, I find they actually kind of really unwind and they actually turn around and they become one of our better clients and a real advocate for us because we continue to listen and we didn't run away from them, right? We weren't just reactive to every time they were possibly upset. We also can think about this in the sense of positivity, of focusing on what's working, that if we are proactive and we're going to them and saying, not only do I want to get you back to status quo, not only do I want to get you back to where you were before you were mad, I'm trying to get you even happier than you were before you're upset. We're going to keep working through this and keep focusing on what's important to you to help you be even happier than you were before you were mad at me. Okay? So this is a strategy that is a little bit more effort, a little more difficult in the short term, but will save you so much heartache in the long term. All right, the next strategy, and this one is tough. It's really tough. But you will have those people, the bullies, and those really, really strong personalities that yell and scream, and maybe will try to tear you down, will be insulting, and maybe you're stuck working with them. I mean, I obviously am a proponent. If you can not work with those kind of people, if that's a bad client, fire them. If it's a bad vendor, fire them. If it's a bad employee, maybe they shouldn't be working with you anymore. But we all have those situations with people where maybe we're stuck. We can't get out of that relationship, and we're going to continue to have to interact with them for some period of time or even forever. Tell them how their behavior makes you feel. Now, maybe not right in the moment of yelling and screaming, but maybe after this interaction, you go back and have another meeting and say, when you say those things to me, it really hurts my feelings. Or when you yell at me, it makes me feel like you don't trust me to get this thing done. Man, it is a just dagger to the heart. That person will feel it. As long as you're not introducing it at the moment of the horrible interaction and the yelling and the screaming or the insulting. If you come back to them later on and tell them how their behavior feels. Now, don't expect them to give you a lot of positive stuff back. Don't expect them to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. They will sort of take it in a very unconventional, clumsy way, but what I do find is if you keep doing that, eventually their behavior actually changes, and you notice them start to kind of stop themselves from really getting out of control. Not that they won't ever do that, but they will get better because they don't want to have that conversation with you again where you tell them how bad you felt or how you went home and cried for an hour because they were so mean to you, right? Or that you were stressed for days, completely upset because you were going to have a meeting with them because you thought they were going to yell and scream at you again. If you share that in the right context, it has a huge impact on those people who are really the worst offenders of some of that bad behavior. This takes practice. It's uncomfortable. I'm not saying any of these strategies are just, it'd be nice if we could just wave a magic wand and make the other person not such a jerk. But these are strategies that really can work if you are brave enough and strong enough to go forth and do it. All right, strategy 7. And this is one that I have found to be terribly effective, wonderfully effective, I should say, in any context, is to give people feed forward. Now, I took this concept from Marshall Goldsmith. Instead of feedback, which is inherently negative, where you go to someone and say, hey, in that last meeting, you yelled at me, you were mean, you didn't like my ideas, I'm really upset. Instead, you say, hey, in the next meeting, could you be more open-minded? Would you mind not getting so upset? I understand if you disagree with me, that's okay. Let's talk about it. But ask them what that behavior looks like going forward. What you need for them in the future. People can far better change their behavior that they haven't done yet, right? They can't do anything about the behavior they've exhibited in the past except feel bad and apologize, which they aren't likely to do if they're a difficult person. But they can think about behavior going forward, and that's often a really great way to sort of reframe the conversation. Maybe you're noticing someone is being overbearing in a meeting and talking over, maybe your quieter people. You can go to them and say, hey, can you make sure that we allow everyone in the group to speak? Can you help me in making sure that everyone feels heard? Can you help me in making sure that you're not talking, more than you're listening? And these are really fantastic ways. People, I have found almost on every occasion they have said yes. They've said, of course. And if they're struggling to maybe do that, it's a really great time to have a conversation as to why maybe they're exhibiting some of that behavior. They're excited. They feel anxious. They feel like their job's on the line. They feel like this project's on the line, whatever it may be, and you can work through that. All right, next strategy, change the communication medium. You know, the written word, for whatever reason, if people don't know what the context is, they tend to take it as negative. So if you send a text and they're not sure, they're going to think you're being critical, or an email. So if you see that you're struggling with people on Slack or on text or on email, then switch it up. Call them, have a video conference. Maybe on the call, the video conference, you're finding they're getting kind of being difficult. Then maybe try just sending them those messages. Don't forget to use emojis or GIFs or whatever you want to use to make sure that you show them what is the intent is, what's the inflection here. Because people can't always tell. We sort of give people way too much credit in trying to understand what we mean. And they don't often come back to us to clarify. So we want to make sure we're very, very obvious. But just change the communication platform. Change how you're sending. You know, I've even gone as far, I was struggling with somebody on a phone. I was struggling with them on video. I struggled with them in sending them an email. And I switched it up and I sent them a letter. And that got them to kind of back down. That got them to sort of calm down and to be, you know, more interactive with me, and our conversations were better. I just changed, how could I change the medium? How can I change how we're interacting with each other? And show them that I value what we are talking about. Number 9, make sure you come prepared. So we want to prepare questions. We want to visualize the outcome. Make sure you know what it is that you want out of that interaction. But also make sure that what you want is good for the other person. If what you want is for the other person to go away and never bother you again, that's probably not going to work. If what you want is for that person to agree with everything you said, that's probably not going to work, right? But maybe what you want is for the two of you to come to an agreement. Maybe the two of you to come to some understanding. For the two of you to understand how you can work better. Whatever that outcome is that's good for you both. And then prepare your questions. What things do you want to ask? What things do you want to deal with? And think about that, and maybe try to diagram that conversation on how you think it might go and where it could go. You can even make like a tree, like, well, if they say this and they say that. Now, conversations naturally will go different places, and that's okay, and you should let it. You shouldn't try to follow the script like it's a play. But if you have thought about questions, you've thought about what they might say, and you've come up with additional questions or thought about and researched so you can answer them appropriately, you will be able to manage that conversation so much better, and the outcome will be so much more important and so much to you and to them that you will find that those outcomes will be better. Now, of course, there's going to be times when it goes off the rails. Again, maybe you need to reschedule. If you feel unprepared, you feel like it's not going where it needs to go, emotions have gotten too high, they're not reacting how you reschedule. Go get help. Think about it again. That it's okay to do that, but come prepared. Too often, I have people that are telling me that they are having a hard time with certain people, and I ask them about their preparation, and they're doing none. They just show up and they're trying to wing it. They're just trying to hope that some magical thing that they're going to say is going to make it all better, and that rarely is the case. So come prepared. All right, we got a few more strategies here. The next one is that when you meet with people really matters. So by default, people's default answer to things is no. Okay, it's negative. It's because they don't want to, we don't want to do something. We don't want to be trapped. We don't want to do something we don't want to do. So if what we have found, there's a really cool story at these parole judges in Israel. This comes from the work of Amos Tversky and Danny Kahneman. And they studied, why did these judges make the decisions they did? Why did they say yes to some people and no to other people when they were up for parole? And what they found was a little bit scary. It had nothing to do with the case, the facts, what they were charged with. It had to do with what the default decision was for that judge. And for most of the judges, it was no. And so they found the hungrier they were, the more likely they were to say no. So if you were like beginning of the day and the judge actually ate breakfast, you were more likely to give a yes. The closer they got to lunch, up to that case right before lunch, they almost always got told no. And the same pattern after lunch, if the judge ate lunch, they tend to always get a yes. All the way through to the end of the day, they always got a no. So you don't want to have a difficult conversation with someone at 11:30 right before they go to lunch. Okay? If you could go out to lunch with someone, that'd be a great place to have a difficult conversation because they're going to have you fed. Okay? Temperature has the same effect on people. If it's too hot or too cold, they kind of go back to their default. Their brain is subconsciously worrying about, when am I going to eat? Am I too hot? Am I too cold? My own physical sort of needs. So make sure you're not, having those conversations with someone when you know they're going to be hungry. So think about time zones. Maybe that person, different time zone than you. If you have a 3 p.m. when they're, it's about that time for snacks, okay, it's not a good time to have a conversation. So think strategically about when you should be meeting with those people to make sure, and even ask them, oh, hey, did you eat lunch? Where'd you eat lunch today? If they go, oh, I skipped lunch today. Oof, probably time to reschedule because they're going to be in their default mode. And if they're a difficult person, their default mode is not good for you. All right, we're down to, I think, our next strategy. Don't forget, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any of those as we get closer. And the next strategy is remember that what you focus on grows. And I cannot emphasize this enough. If you are focusing only on their difficult things and you're only focusing on the negative and you're only focusing on what they do wrong and you're never talk about what's going right and what's working, that's what will grow. Okay, so if you're focused in on them being a bully or them being a slacker or whatever it is, that's all the message they're getting, and that's all that you're talking about. That's all they hear. That's all you're talking to everybody else about. You can expect that behavior to get worse. You can expect that to grow because either that's all the attention that they're getting from you is from that thing, or because they're passive aggressively thinking, well, if you think I'm a bully, I'm going to act like a bully. Okay, so try to focus. Yes, you need to deal with the difficult personality or traits or things going on. Make sure that you are trying to put most of your focus on what's positive and what's working. And that will sort of emphasize to that person that where they get attention, where they get praise, where they get recognition is from doing these positive things. And that will diminish some of that negative behavior because you're sort of telling them, I want to see more positive behavior. Wow, you did this great thing. This project went really well. You met your quota. You're doing great on your sales. That's great. That's what we want to focus on. And then here's what we need you to improve, right? This is a secondary conversation. But if you spend all your time focused on everything you don't like and everything they're doing wrong and where they're difficult, you can expect that behavior to get worse. You can expect that to grow. You can expect that to be magnified because that's where your focus is. All right. So the next one is, to sort of look at, what do you do if you just can't get through? Okay, sometimes you just got to fold your cards. So if anyone has played poker, you can't win every hand. You can't be in every hand. Sometimes you just got to let it go. So, you have to think about what those strategies are with people. And as I've said before, if you don't respect that person, if you don't have to work with someone who's treating you poorly and has a difficult thing, then don't. I think you shouldn't. There are those times when you have to, but remember that some people should just be removed. If you have a difficult person in your organization and you can't get through that, the coaching, how you're going to focus it, how you're going to reframe those conversations, if you just can't get there, maybe this is not the right place for them to work. Maybe you're not the right environment and you need to let them go. You're doing them a bigger disservice by leaving them in a position that you're unhappy and they're unhappy too. Remember that bullying in the workplace should be brought to HR. There are lots of laws federally and in the states about how people, if they are being bullied and they're being targeted, that you have a responsibility as an employer to deal with that. You have a responsibility to manage that. Being bullied and being targeted is different, right? It's a different set of patterns, a different set of things than just someone being difficult. Okay, there's people who are difficult, and there's someone who's going back and targeting someone and taking things out on them. And so we need to distinguish between the difference and make sure that we're dealing with that appropriately. Because you do have a responsibility in the workplace to deal with bullying behavior and targeting behavior for sure. Anything that's inappropriate obviously needs to be brought up to HR. So yes, we want to deal with difficult people, but remember that if it goes beyond a certain line, you had better have your HR department. You better have your boss in on that and talking about that so that you're not at risk down the road. So that's about it. That's my presentation today. I hope that you have enjoyed sort of some of these topics. I saw a few comments here. Thank you that so many of you are appreciative of some of the strategies and feel like you can use them. If anyone has a specific question, I'm happy to answer that. If you'd like to learn more about me, there's the website. You can ask for a copy of the presentation. We will have this video up if you'd like to share it with anybody. Also, if you would like to learn more about People G2 and background checks, maybe how we can help you while you're screening or bringing people back to work, that's quite a few services we have lined up around that. So happy to answer any of that as well. I just want to make sure it looks like there's chat, and then there's also Q&A. So I want to make sure that got everyone's comments here. So thank you so much to everyone who's attended. Oh, so someone did have a question. What are some techniques to calm yourself down when things get excited? It's a great question. Thank you, Jonathan. So a couple things. Being prepared, I find, is one of my best techniques. I mentioned, if I have an idea of what I think I need to ask and talk about, and I have a good idea of what I think they might say, even if it's mean and it's rude, and I have a response ready, that helps me keep me grounded, that I can kind of maneuver through that conversation. But if you feel like you're in a situation where you don't have anywhere to go and you don't feel prepared, that's when you got to say, I hear you. It feels like we've gotten a little excited here. Why don't we come back in 15 minutes and talk? Why don't we come back tomorrow and talk? That is your best strategy, to just stop it. Don't let it get too crazy, and then come back later on and pick up where you left off. That's kind of the second best strategy. And remember, again, if they're being rude, if they're calling you names, to address that. This is how you make me feel when you do that, when you guys are calm. The next question, it says, any of this play out differently in a virtual environment? Sure, and that's why I suggested that being on video is huge. So it certainly, if you're used to having these conversations with people one-on-one, face-to-face, in the cubicle farm, in a conference room, it's pretty hard to all of a sudden be on your cell phone and doing it. You're going to find that some of those bad behaviors will come out more often. So getting on video, your Zooms, your Slacks, your Microsoft Teams, whatever it is another great way to do that. To make sure you can see their body language, you can have good eye contact, you can smile, and they can see you. So next question is, what about game players? By that I mean people who are not interested in productive relationships but are interested in a power play. How do you deal with them? Great question, Claire. So I would say that think about what's in it for them, right? So are they there to get ahead and to get promoted and to advance in their career? They have their goals, and so you need to think about how do we frame this in a way that's, in line with them too. So if we need certain things out of them, we have to think about how we can present that in a way where they can still win as well, right? Some people are extremely ambitious and they're looking for the next promotion, the next job, and the next pay. And so we have that's just how they are, and we need to figure out how that fits into what we're trying to do. Now, the organization at large, though, has to create an overall better culture to our transparency and positivity, and what we're rewarding and what our purpose is aligned in a way that those types of people, if they're going to do those things, it is aligned with the company. And if it's not, again, they may not be the right person. And if all they care about is themselves and everything is about themselves, and it's not about the purpose of the company, this is not about what the goals of the company and the department are, then ultimately they may be someone who shouldn't be there long term, even if they are a top performer. And we've had that. We've had to let top performers go who were not team players, who were not there for us, who were not willing to step in and help their teammates out if it was nothing was in it for them. That's not the kind of person we want in our organization, even if they could consistently hit their quotas. Another question. I have a direct report that lost her husband over a year ago. She cannot recover, and her work product is very low. She cries every time we talk. I've given her so much space to heal for over a year. Now what? Well, that's really tough. And so there's lots of places you could go with this, right? So not knowing what your company offers, certainly suggesting, what are they doing to take care of themselves? What are they doing outside of work, right? What can your work, help, and provide to them, and that's different from every company, and I'm sure you're probably have thought about that and doing that. But at some point, you're going to have to get back to output. You're going to have to get back, continue to have those and to give them space and to talk, but you're going to have to start having that conversation with them that, hey, you're here to do a job, and here's what we need from you, and how do we get there? How do we get there together? And I know you've been dealing with a lot, and I know you've been having a lot of, that this is going on, and maybe you can't ever really understand or know what they're going through, but how do we deal with the output? And that's the measurement component. And so I think if you begin to have that conversation and to get them to think about, maybe they can come up with a plan. How do we get you back to where you were, from an output standpoint? Because this company needs you, you're valuable to us. And don't try to go from, where they are today to within a week where they were before that event, right? Maybe how do they get 1% better every day, 1% better every week, right? If they're 25% off, if they could get it 1% better every week in 25 weeks, they'd be back to where they were. Is that okay for you? Or maybe it's 1% better every day, whatever that is. But try to do it in small incremental changes. The next one is, let's see. Yeah, we would like to share your webinar with our managers. Will this be sent? Yes, it will be sent out to participants. We'll send you a link. A recorded webinar and all the questions will be on a video on our website, so we certainly will deal with that. So the next one is, how do you deal with entitlement? Of course, that's difficult. Again, I'm a big proponent of what is it we've all agreed to that you're supposed to do, and are you doing that, and are we measuring your output? You can feel entitled to whatever you want. You can think that you deserve whatever you want, but what is it you're doing, right? You've said you'll do X, Y, and Z. Have you done it? Great, you did it. Fantastic. No, you didn't. How do we fix that? And having those conversations. Now, if that entitlement's getting in the way, maybe they think they deserve all the space in the refrigerator, or they always get to make take all the coffee and never refill the coffee pot. If it's something else small, then I think that's feed forward, right? You go back and say, here's what we need from you going forward. This is how you're being perceived by others when you do these things. This is how you make other people feel, and see if you can help work through that. Again, remember, you're not going to change someone's behavior overnight. We can help make their behavior better and help them understand a little bit at a time. And often, if you said, if I could help this person get 10% better this year, wow, would that make a big difference? And if that's your goal, so if you can average 1% a month with maybe 2 months where they don't really progress, is that good enough? And if it's not, then maybe they're not the right person. But, you have to look for that change slowly over time. Okay, next question. For those of us working with others who are new to video discussions, do you have any suggestions on how we can encourage shy partners who don't necessarily want to turn their cameras on but just prefer audio? So here we need to let them know in advance. Hey, this is really important. We need to have this conversation. I will be asking you to be on video. Letting them know in advance gives them that they can curate their office. They can make sure their hair is combed or whatever it is they want to do. They can make sure they've tested, their video works. Often it's just preparing them in advance. And then sharing with them. I'm going to make sure that I can see you, you can see me, so we don't have any misunderstandings, so that we can see each other's smiles and see each other's body language, and that I want to make sure that we connect on this, that you really share why that's important. Ultimately, if you can't get back that, then you may have to require that. You may have to say this, for this conversation, it's required that everyone is on video, and this is why, this is what we're going to do. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I think it's okay for you to push because it is so important. Because it is so easy to misunderstand people if we only hear them, or we only read things. We have evolved over years living with people in these groups and small groups and tribes, and we just sort of naturally pick up so much by just seeing someone. I mean, all of you are picking up things about me and seeing my video, which is why I have it on for these webinars, because you're seeing what I get excited about and how I raise my eyebrows and when do I get excited, right? You're picking up so much about me. I'm unfortunately not picking up anything about you like I would in a keynote, but you're at least picking up things, and that helps. It makes a difference. These have been fantastic questions, so thank you all so much for everything, all of your comments, all of your great questions. So we had someone also send a note about certainly a lot of this is about emotional intelligence, and you're absolutely right. So that's a great observation. If you want to go and read some books about emotional intelligence, for me, I like to just give everyone practical advice. There's many practical things, and if you get excited and it's working for you, you'll probably come back to me and ask me for more, and then we can get into the 201. This is the 101 stuff. So go forth, have fun with it, try it out, see what works. Again, I'll get you a copy of my presentation. It's hard to remember all 11 strategies. But when you get in these situations, you might be able to go back and reference it or rewatch the video and pick up some stuff. So I also have 100 different books I could suggest to you. So happy to be a resource if you need it. If your company needs any specific training or help, please let me know. And again, we're here for you as you come back to your rehiring needs going forward. So thanks, everyone. Stay safe, and hope you're all doing well, and that we come out of this COVID thing hopefully maybe better than we left it. So thanks, everyone. Bye.